Deep in the heart of a small, forgotten village, there stood an enormous tree. Its bark was dark and twisted, almost like it had been scarred by some terrible secret. The villagers always felt uneasy around it, as if the tree knew something they didn't. They called it the evil tree, not because it had thorns or scary-looking branches, but because it had a strange, powerful magic that made people's lives go wrong. No one could remember when the tree had first appeared, but they knew that it had been standing there for as long as anyone could remember. The villagers believed that it had the power to change their fate, something that should be good, right? But as time passed, they began to realize something terrifying. The tree was not helping them, it was holding them back. Children born near the tree would grow up with bad luck, and adults who tried to start new businesses or families often found themselves failing again and again. It seemed like the evil tree was stealing away their hopes and dreams, and no one knew why or how. The tree stood tall, its twisted branches reaching toward the sky, as if it was watching and waiting, guarding the secrets of the village. The elders of the village often told stories about the evil tree. They said that many years ago, it wasn't evil at all. In fact, the tree used to be a kind, magical being that helped the people. It would grant wishes, bring rain during dry seasons, and help crops grow strong. It was a tree of life, full of hope and love. But one dark night, something terrible happened. A powerful sorcerer, full of greed and hatred, came to the village. He was looking for a way to control people's destinies. He wanted to make sure that the villagers would depend on him forever, and he thought the evil tree was the key to doing that. The sorcerer cast a spell on the tree, turning its magic into something dark and twisted. The tree's power was no longer used to help, but to trap people in endless loops of misfortune. From that moment on, no one could escape the tree's curse. Their dreams and destinies were locked away, and every time they tried to change their lives, the evil tree would stop them. No matter what they did, the tree made sure that they could never live the lives they dreamed of. One day, a stranger came to the village. He was young, with eyes that seemed to know more than he should, and he carried a long, glowing staff. He walked straight toward the evil tree without fear, even though the villagers warned him to stay away. The villagers had heard rumors of a young man who had been searching for the tree for years. They said he was the last of an ancient family who had once been the tree's guardians, protectors of the village. They had been told stories of their ancestors who used the tree's magic for good, not evil. But the stranger said nothing. He only looked at the tree, as if he was waiting for something. The villagers followed him from a distance, whispering about what might happen. Some thought he might be able to break the curse, while others believed he was foolish for even trying. The air around the tree seemed to grow colder the closer he got, but the stranger did not stop. He walked right up to the base of the tree and placed his hand on its bark. For a long moment, nothing happened. The tree stood still, and the world felt as though it had stopped moving. But then, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and a low, growling sound came from the tree. The air grew heavier, and everyone could feel a strange energy filling the air, an energy that was both terrifying and strangely familiar. As the stranger touched the evil tree, the villagers could see that something was happening. The tree's bark began to crack open, revealing glowing, green veins pulsing beneath the surface. The air around the tree grew thick with magic. Some of the villagers gasped in fear, but others felt a strange pull, like the tree was calling to them. Suddenly, the tree spoke. Its voice was deep and dark, like the wind howling through an old cave. "You cannot undo what has been done," it said. "I hold the fate of this village in my roots. For 37 years, I have watched, I have waited. No one can change what I have decided." The villagers trembled, knowing that the tree was the one who had kept them in misery all this time. The stranger, however, did not flinch. He stood firm, his hand still pressed against the tree's bark. You may have held their destiny for 37 years, but you will not hold it for a second longer, he said in a voice that was both calm and strong. The tree growled louder, its branches shaking, but the stranger did not move. He closed his eyes and began chanting words that the villagers had never heard before, words that seemed to reach deep inside the tree, touching the very core of its power. The air grew colder, and the wind howled like a storm was coming. As the chanting grew louder, the ground began to shake harder, and the tree's twisted branches began to writhe like snakes. The villagers could see the power of the tree struggling against the stranger's magic. It was as if the tree itself was alive, fighting back with everything it had. But the stranger was not afraid. His voice grew stronger, and the magic from his staff surged into the tree. For the first time in 37 years, the evil tree seemed to lose its grip on the villagers' destinies. The dark energy that had held them in place for so long began to crack and break. The tree's branches stopped moving, and the dark, glowing light that had filled the air began to fade. But just as it seemed like the tree might finally let go, a great roar filled the air. The tree's voice echoed again, louder this time. You cannot defeat me. I will not be silenced. The ground shook violently, and the entire village seemed to tremble with fear. The stranger's magic flickered, and for a moment, it seemed like all hope was lost. But the stranger held on, refusing to give up. The roar of the evil tree echoed through the village, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The air was thick with a strange, cold energy, and the villagers felt the weight of the curse pressing down on them. It seemed like the tree had summoned all its power to fight the stranger, and for a moment, it seemed as though the tree might win. But the stranger, still holding his staff, took a deep breath. The magic around him pulsed with energy, and he spoke again, this time with words that were not in any language the villagers knew. His voice was steady and strong, and it seemed to vibrate the very air itself. The ground beneath their feet trembled once more, but this time, the shaking felt different. It was as if the earth was responding to his command, helping him in his battle against the tree. The tree, sensing something was changing, hissed and creaked like old wood under strain. The light from its twisted branches dimmed, flickering like a candle about to burn out. In that moment, something unexpected happened. The villagers heard a soft, distant voice in the air, a voice that whispered like a forgotten memory. You think you can break me, the voice echoed. You cannot undo what I have done. My roots run too deep. You do not understand the truth. The stranger's eyes flashed with understanding. He didn't answer the tree's voice, instead, he raised his staff high, and the energy around him grew brighter. The villagers could see it now, a faint glow beginning to radiate from deep inside the tree. As the energy from the stranger's staff grew stronger, the ground beneath the tree cracked open, revealing something hidden beneath its roots. At first, the villagers could only see dark shapes moving, as if something was awakening deep within the earth. The air around them grew colder, and the wind howled through the village. It felt like the very earth was alive, and it was trembling in fear. Then, slowly, the darkness began to recede, revealing something unimaginable. Beneath the tree's roots lay a hidden chamber, a place untouched by time. In the center of this chamber was a stone tablet, covered in glowing runes. The runes pulsed with energy, as if they were alive themselves. And beneath the tablet, a strange, glowing crystal was embedded in the earth, its light dim, as though it had been drained of power for centuries. The stranger stepped forward, his eyes locked on the crystal. He could feel its magic, ancient and powerful. The tree had not been the true source of the curse after all. It had been merely a guardian of something far darker, a curse placed on the village by a forgotten king, a king who had once ruled with fear and cruelty. The evil tree had been part of a larger spell, a spell that had locked the village's future away for 37 long years. The villagers began to murmur in disbelief. They had always believed that the tree had cursed them on its own. But now they understood, it was not the tree that had caused their pain, but the king's ancient spell, hidden deep in the earth. The tree had only been a vessel, a prison for their stolen destinies. The stranger now understood what he had to do. He turned to the villagers, his face set with determination. This tree, this curse, it's not just a magic that can be broken easily. It is a binding spell, placed by an ancient king. The tree was never the enemy, it was a keeper of this dark magic. To free you all, we must break the spell from its very source. The villagers looked at each other, confused and scared. They had always feared the tree, and now the truth was harder to bear. But they also knew this was their chance. If the stranger could break the spell, they could finally be free of the years of misfortune that had ruled their lives. The stranger walked toward the glowing crystal. He knelt down, placing his hand on the cold stone of the tablet. The runes pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and the air crackled with energy. The spell is powerful, but it is not unbreakable, he muttered to himself. I must destroy the crystal and free the magic bound to it. The villagers watched, holding their breath. The stranger raised his staff high, and the air around them seemed to hum with anticipation. He brought it down with a crash, striking the crystal with the full force of his magic. There was a blinding flash of light, and the earth beneath their feet trembled as though the world itself was being torn apart. The villagers screamed, but the light was too bright to look at. It was as though the very sky had opened up. The tree let out a deafening roar, and its branches twisted violently. The crystal began to crack, its glow flickering in and out as the stranger's magic battled against the ancient curse. The ground split wide open, and it seemed as though the world was coming to an end. The light was so bright that the villagers had to close their eyes. When they opened them again, everything was different. The evil tree was no longer glowing with dark power. The twisted branches had stopped moving, and the heavy weight of the curse was gone. The air was still, the wind had stopped howling, and the earth had settled. But there was no time to relax. The ground beneath them began to shake again, more violently than before. The crystal had cracked, but it had not been destroyed. It was fighting back, its power still strong and threatening. The stranger stepped forward, his face grim. He knew the final challenge had arrived. He raised his staff one more time, and the crystal's energy clashed against his magic. The village trembled, and for a moment, it seemed as though the tree might rise again, more powerful than ever. But the stranger was relentless. He focused all his energy on the crystal, willing it to break. The crystal shattered with a sound like thunder, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then, a wave of pure energy surged through the land, washing away the darkness and the fear. The curse was finally broken. The evil tree, its roots now free of the spell, slowly began to wither, its power fading into the earth. As the crystal shattered and the blinding wave of light surged through the village, the evil tree began to wither. Its once gnarled branches lost their sinister glow, and its dark bark turned brittle, crumbling like dry leaves in the wind. The earth trembled one final time, and then, silence fell. For a long moment, no one moved. The villagers stood frozen, staring in disbelief at the tree, now nothing more than a hollow, decaying trunk. The air was different now. It no longer felt heavy or thick with dread. Instead, a soft warmth spread through the village, as if the sun had risen for the first time in many years. The stranger lowered his staff, his eyes tired but resolute. He had done it. The curse was broken. The spell that had held the village in its grasp for 37 long years was gone. But as the villagers slowly gathered around him, they realized there was something else that had changed. The curse may have been lifted, but the village was still scarred. The years of bad luck, the missed opportunities, the failed dreams, those things couldn't be undone overnight. For the villagers, the curse had not just been a dark magic, it had been a part of their lives. It had shaped who they were, and now, they had to rebuild. The stranger, sensing the weight of their unspoken fears, turned to face them. "The curse is broken," he said softly. "But now, you must rebuild. Your destinies are no longer trapped by the tree's magic. You are free to choose your future, but you must do so with courage. This is your chance." The villagers exchanged uncertain looks. Many had forgotten what it felt like to have choices, to have hope for a future that wasn't dictated by bad luck or failure. But now, they saw something new in each other's eyes, the glimmer of hope. One by one, they began to speak, their voices rising in quiet determination. "We will rebuild," said one old woman, her hands trembling, but her voice strong. "We will dream again." Another man stepped forward. "We will create a future for our children that is not controlled by fear." The villagers began to gather together, their hands reaching for one another, starting to make plans, to dream, and to hope. They no longer had to look at the evil tree as the source of their misfortune. They could look forward to what they could create together. But the stranger, who had done what no one else could, stood apart from them. He knew his work here was done. He had broken the curse, but there was still a long journey ahead for the village. And for him, there was another path to walk. He turned to leave, his staff glowing faintly as he stepped away from the village, knowing his destiny lay somewhere else. The days that followed the breaking of the curse were not easy, but they were full of promise. The village began to heal, and the people found themselves walking together like never before. Fields that had once been barren began to bloom again. Crops grew strong, and the soil, once darkened by years of despair, began to show signs of life. The air felt fresher, and the laughter of children, once a rare sound, echoed through the village once more. One by one, the villagers began to rebuild their homes and their lives. The old woman who had spoken with such courage began teaching the young children how to plant and grow vegetables, passing down the knowledge of a life that had once thrived in harmony with the land. The man who had lost everything to bad luck started a small shop, and for the first time in years, customers came to buy his goods, their eyes full of trust and hope. He smiled as he realized that he no longer needed to fear failure, his future was his own to shape. Even the children, once trapped by the curse of the tree, began to dream again. They no longer whispered to each other about the tree or the bad luck that haunted them. Instead, they talked about the future, about what they would be when they grew up, what they would create, and the adventures they would have. The village, once cloaked in shadow, was now full of light. The old ways of fear and despair slowly melted away, replaced by a new sense of freedom. And yet, despite all the changes, there was one thing the villagers never forgot, the lesson that the stranger had taught them. The curse may have been broken, but it was up to them to keep the magic of hope alive. They would not allow themselves to fall back into the trap of darkness. They would carry the light of their newfound freedom with them, always. And far away, in another land, the stranger walked on. He had come to the village to break a curse, but the journey had taught him something he had never expected to learn. Hope was a powerful magic, stronger than any curse. Months passed, and the village continued to thrive. It was a place reborn, filled with laughter, warmth, and the promise of a bright future. The villagers no longer looked to the past with fear or regret, but forward with hope and determination. The tree was gone, but its dark legacy had taught them a valuable lesson, that they were stronger than any curse, and that together, they could face anything. One bright morning, as the sun rose over the village, the children gathered in the town square. They were drawing pictures with chalk, creating bright images of a future full of possibility. They drew suns, flowers, and smiling faces. They drew the future they had always wanted but had never been able to see until now. Among the children, one little girl held up her drawing to show the others. It was a picture of a tree, not just any tree, but a tree with bright, green leaves, with birds singing in its branches and children playing around it. It was a symbol of life and hope, a symbol of what they had rebuilt. "The tree is gone," she said softly, "but we'll grow new ones. Ones that are full of life and light." The other children nodded, their faces full of joy. They had learned that even after the darkest days, a new beginning could always be found. And with the lessons of the past in their hearts, they would never again be trapped by the shadows of the past. The village had been saved, not by magic alone, but by the strength, courage, and hope of its people. Together, they had broken the curse and forged a future that was their own. And as they looked toward that future, they knew that no darkness could ever hold them again. Months passed, and life in the village continued to bloom with new energy. The villagers were no longer weighed down by the invisible chains of the curse, and with each passing day, they felt more and more like they were truly free. They had learned to build, to dream, and to trust in themselves again. But even as the village thrived, there was one question that lingered in the hearts of the villagers: who was the stranger, the one who had come to them when they needed him most? No one knew his true name, but his actions had left a mark on their hearts. The old woman who had taught the children to plant crops often spoke of him, saying, "He wasn't just a man, he was like a spark of light in our darkness. A light we didn't even know we had inside ourselves." The children, who had once feared the tree and the darkness it brought, now grew up hearing stories about the stranger, about how he had broken the curse and given them back their futures. The villagers made sure to tell these stories often, for they knew the importance of remembering the past, even as they moved forward. They knew that the stranger's gift had not only been the breaking of the curse, but the awakening of something deeper, something within themselves. One crisp evening, just as the sun began to set and the sky turned a deep orange, a young man from the village stood by the edge of the old forest, near where the evil tree had once stood. He looked out into the distance, remembering the battles, the fear, and the hope that had come before. Though the tree was gone, he could still feel the presence of something ancient in the air, something that had always been there, waiting for the right moment. As he stood there, something caught his eye. A small, glowing seed lay half buried in the earth. It was faint, almost as if it was struggling to shine in the fading light, but there was no mistaking it. It was a seed of hope. The young man knelt down and gently picked it up. It was warm to the touch, pulsing with life. "It's the tree," he whispered to himself, realizing what he was holding. This wasn't just any seed, it was a part of the evil tree that had been freed from the curse. But instead of carrying darkness, the seed now carried the potential for new life. The curse had been broken, but the magic of the tree, once so dark, was now transformed into something that could help the village heal in ways they had never imagined. The discovery of the glowing seed sparked a wave of excitement throughout the village. The villagers gathered around the young man who had found it, and many of them felt a strange sense of connection to it. They knew that it was no ordinary seed, it was a symbol of their future, a future free from the curse. The village elders gathered the children and explained the significance of the seed. "This seed comes from the evil tree," the elder woman said, "but it holds no evil now. It holds hope, the same hope that the stranger left us. We can plant it, and with time, we can watch it grow into something beautiful, just as we have grown." The villagers decided to plant the seed together in the center of the village, where the evil tree had once stood. The place was now sacred, not because of the tree that had ruled them with darkness, but because of the strength and unity that had brought them freedom. The children dug the hole, their little hands working together as they placed the seed into the earth. The adults stood around them, watching, their hearts filled with a quiet joy. They knew that this seed wasn't just about planting a new tree, it was about planting a new way of life, one built on hope, unity, and the lessons of the past. As they covered the seed with soil, a soft glow filled the air, and the ground seemed to hum with energy. The villagers took a step back, amazed. They had never seen anything like this before. It was as though the land itself was welcoming the seed, ready to nurture it into something extraordinary. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The village continued to grow stronger. With the land flourishing, the villagers had more food, more resources, and more time to spend with their families. The children's laughter grew louder, their imaginations running wild as they dreamed of a future that was full of endless possibilities. But the most remarkable change was the growing tree in the village center. It wasn't like the evil tree that had stood there before, it was different. The leaves shimmered with gold and green, and its branches stretched high into the sky, full of life and promise. It grew quickly, its roots spreading deep into the ground, its trunk sturdy and strong. The villagers would gather around it every day, marveling at how fast it was growing. They decorated the tree with flowers, ribbons, and small wooden carvings, each one a symbol of hope and gratitude. They called it the Tree of Destiny, for it was a living reminder that they controlled their own futures, that they had the power to overcome any curse, any obstacle. One day, a small bird appeared in the branches of the tree. The children cheered, pointing and clapping as it fluttered from branch to branch, singing a beautiful song. The villagers knew then that the curse had truly been broken. The tree, once a prison, had become a symbol of freedom, life, and rebirth. The stranger, though far from the village, had left his mark. The seed he had found and planted had brought new life to the land, and with it, a new understanding of what it meant to live with purpose and hope. The villagers now knew that destiny wasn't something that could be stolen or cursed, it was something that could be created, one choice at a time. Years passed, and the village continued to thrive. The Tree of Destiny had become a symbol of their resilience, and the villagers had not only rebuilt their homes but also their spirits. Their futures were bright, and every year, they celebrated the day the curse had been broken, the day they had reclaimed their destinies. One warm summer evening, as the sun began to set, a figure appeared at the edge of the village. The villagers, who had long since told the story of the stranger to their children, recognized him immediately. It was the man who had come to them all those years ago, the one who had broken the curse. The stranger walked into the village with a calm smile, his staff still glowing faintly, though his journey had clearly taken him far. The villagers greeted him with cheers, their faces full of gratitude. "I thought I might return someday," he said, his voice gentle and warm. "I see that you have all done well." The villagers gathered around him, eager to share their stories. They told him of the Tree of Destiny and how it had grown tall and strong, just as they had. They told him of their dreams, their businesses, and the new lives they had built, lives that were no longer bound by a curse. The stranger listened quietly, nodding in approval. "It seems I did not come in vain," he said with a smile. "You've made your own destinies now. I am proud of you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the stranger looked toward the Tree of Destiny, its branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. He knew that his work here was done. The villagers no longer needed him, they had found the strength within themselves to carry on. But he also knew that their hope, their courage, would live on, just like the tree. With a final smile and a quiet nod, the stranger turned and walked away, disappearing into the horizon. The villagers, now free to live their lives as they chose, stood together beneath the tree, knowing that the future was bright and full of promise. The villagers have not only reclaimed their destiny but have also passed on the torch of hope, making sure that the lessons learned would never be forgotten. If you ever want to revisit or expand on this story again, just let me know. What did you think of this story? Have you ever faced something scary and found the strength to overcome it? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Comment below with your thoughts on how you would defeat the evil tree.